Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the FinCom Summit 2022, brought to you by CXO Global Forum. CXO Global Forum is a knowledge-sharing platform for all C-levels across the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy with our league of extraordinary thought leaders. So we provoke conversations, and one of the initiatives has been this FinCom Summit 2022, where we're talking about everything related to fintech and e-commerce, m-commerce, quick commerce, etc. So for this particular panel discussion, we've put together some seasoned professionals, and the topic that we're going to be talking about is e-commerce, a catalyst for disruptive fintech innovation. Before I introduce the topic, let me introduce our esteemed panelists. So we've got Mr. Furqan Kidwai joining us from YPay, Mr. Umair Muneer from OLX, my very dear friend, Mr. Habib Paracha from Blinq. He's also a serial entrepreneur and a Hollywood film producer. And then shortly, Mr. Umair Ansari from Abhi is going to be joining us as well, so I've been told. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan, these are exciting times for Pakistan in terms of the fintech sector. We've seen that technological innovation in financial services has been particularly rapid and pronounced in the recent years. The introduction of fintech has allowed consumers to enjoy ever more personalized and convenient service platforms as banks and businesses benefit from efficiency and cost savings of these innovations. That being said, banks and traditional financial service providers, however, face a number of challenges in their efforts to harness the benefits and transformative potential of fintech innovation. And we're moving towards an e-commerce based economy. Thankfully, because of the pandemic, these efforts, along with some of the regulatory policies that were relaxed by the government, saw a big push. But where are we at right now? What is the standpoint? How can e-commerce be a catalyst for disruptive fintech innovation? Let's start by hearing some thoughts from our panelists, starting with Mr. Habib Paracha, please.
Hi, thank you, Anza, and it's great to be part of this panel. And you're absolutely correct. Very exciting time for Pakistan when it comes to the fintech space. There's an old saying with regards to wherever there is chaos, there is opportunity, and I think that's the best way to describe the Pakistani financial ecosystem. For the longest times, the legacy banks have not really done too much in terms of innovative products for consumers, and that is what creates this opportunity. And given that our local transport infrastructure has not been the best, it also helps to kind of create an enabling environment indirectly for e-commerce. I can tell you personally, I do a lot of my own shopping. Even before I came to Pakistan, I was in university in the US, and I got used to early on, websites like eBay and Amazon and Barnes and Noble. At that time, I used to order all my college books off that. And, when I came to Pakistan, I was like, why don't we have this here? But at that time, sadly, our internet was not up to the mark. So it was not possible to do a lot of these, things locally. Today, I'm pretty much buying everything online. I hardly end up going out for shopping. And the best thing is I'm able to utilize websites like, for example, Daraz, where I'm purchasing things from all across Pakistan based on the product that I need. So it's not me just going to one store and saying, do you have this particular product available? I just go onto the website, and it could be a seller in Gujranwala, Multan, Peshawar, and 3 days later, 4 days later, the product arrives at my doorstep. So the convenience of that, and at a very minimal fee, plus I think that fee is offset by the competitive nature of the internet, because now people and merchants aren't able to just price gorge or just arbitrarily price things, because when you search, you're going to find that product at 10 other places, and consumers are just going to buy the cheapest one. So you're only paying the shipping, and that's quite honestly not a very large amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you for sharing those insights, Mr. Umair Muneer. Your perspective.
Yeah, so I agree with Habib bhai. It's basically COVID has been a catalyst for us, right? So pre-COVID, so what COVID has done is taken the pain away on customer acquisition, right? So I'll give you an example. So my dad is 77, right? The only usage pre-COVID to his for his iPad was basically that he spoke to us on FaceTime or Skype or wherever, because we don't live at home. So spoke to me, spoke to my daughter. Uh, One day I get a call from him and he says, "Beta, phone the home landline, because he still uses his landline. Uh, that's gone offline because I couldn't go and pay the bill because the bank timings were really constrained." And I said, "Okay, no worries, Dad. Let me pay your bill." And within 2 minutes, I went on my online banking and I paid the bill. And within 20 minutes, PTCL activated the line and he could start using it. Then next time I visit Lahore, he sits me down, say, "What did you do? Can you teach me?" Right? And that's the reason I gave you the example is, for a 77-year-old who's hard of hearing, it's very difficult to get on this. But then I put the Standard Chartered app on his phone. I put the fingerprint. I taught him how to do it, how to prevent fraud. And so behavioral change is happening, right? So everybody is seen, including us, 30% growth, traffic growth, order growth, just because of COVID. And it's all organic, right? So that's the positive side of it, right? Where I see, and there's prepaid, moving to prepaid, because people couldn't take money out, right? So what COVID also did is, people who were very cash dependent, my wife is cash dependent, right? So she takes out ghar ka kharcha every start of every month, and then puts it in an envelope and starts writing 3,000 isko diye, 4,000 isko diye, right? So all of that, right? So, but now suddenly I've introduced her to a few apps. She was having a hard time keeping, and we've given a Sada Pay card to our boy who does our errands, right? And we put 5,000 in it, and you get all the transactions. And this is a change. She would not have moved to that if it was not because of COVID. So I think COVID overall, a lot of people lost lives and everything, but from a business environment perspective, it's got a regulator thinking, it's got logistics companies thinking, it's got investors excited about 220. So COVID has put us on the map, basically, right? So if you ask me, and that's basically put a silent revolution in e-commerce, at least. And now, on the fintech side, obviously without fintech, e-commerce cannot operate. So this is my 10 cents on the start, right?
Right. Mr. Furqan, do you have anything to add, or perhaps a differing opinion?
Yeah, I think most of the points have already been covered by these two veterans. And I think I would like to just build upon what Umair said. It's basically, COVID has proven to be a blessing in disguise for Pakistan, especially. So if you talk about two years ago, speaking in the investment side of the fintech industry, you couldn't even open an investment account in a brokerage or a mutual fund industry without a biometric. And look here, we are standing where we could directly open an account within one working day in the asset management company and could buy and sell mutual funds directly from our own ease by sitting at home. So you see, e-commerce is on the parallel side supporting the fintech, but on the other end, fintech is also supporting the e-commerce. So both of them are for me, is kind of a most contributing factor to both the industry. So without fintech, e-commerce would suffer, and on the vice versa, the fintech industry would also suffer if there is no e-commerce. So I think there is nothing more to add what Habib Saab and Umair Saab has already said, but I think this is the criteria that is going to take us forward.
Right. Now, Habib, one of the things that Umair said has been resonating with as a theme throughout this FinCom Summit. The investors are excited. we know that a lot of new billing aggregators and payment gateways have seen a lot of investments. We've seen one of the biggest investments by HVL VC fund into Finja, for example. Then we also know that startups like Creditbook and so on and so forth have seen again big funding from international funds. So why do you think, what is the attracting factor in Pakistan? Why do you think, because all eyes seem to be on us, what are the potential benefits and what are some of the risks that this portrays?
So, look, I mean, like I said earlier, wherever there's chaos, there's opportunity. So primarily the excitement is because of that the sector, the financial inclusivity of Pakistan is so low. And that's what creates the opportunity. Given that we have a high tele density, we have a young population. Umair Saab gave the example of his father. But, if you look at the demographic of Pakistan, you have over 60% of the population under 30. Most of these people are, they may not all be English speaking or tech savvy, but they pretty much have smartphones, which means they know how to download apps. And anyone who doesn't aspires to get a smartphone. That's just the nature of the younger generation. So, the potential, the lifetime value of that customer is huge. Fine, it's in rupees, but again, the problem set is so large that it just adds to the value. Kiji, no one else is doing it. The legacy banks have not done much. So, that's why you're seeing so much investment. Now, having said that, the risk is always there that not everything that's getting funded is going to work. Definitely not. And I think, I won't name names, but I think some of the rounds of some of the companies are sorry, but quite unjustifiable in terms of valuations. And it's completely,
that's something that I believe as well. But I would like you to be as candid as possible, because
I don't want to put anyone on the spot by names, but I just think, look, I have a background in finance and operations management myself. I've been involved for like 20 years with all kinds of companies, from, industrial to even running my own ISP at one point. So I was at the forefront of even IT in Pakistan, because I had my own ISP back in 2000. And I shut it down subsequently because I realized this is becoming a commoditized product, and that was converting from dial-up to DSL. Anyway, that's a completely different convo. But it's all right for some of these companies to fail, because innovation only comes from failure, and Pakistan has its own unique set of problems, and those will only be solved when you have local companies and local startups with local founders who are going to basically try and solve those problems. The biggest thing is, again,
like indigenous solution.
Yeah. Fine. We don't have to reinvent the wheel completely. So there are solutions that have worked globally. So that, I think, to a large degree also mitigates the risk from that perspective, that, hey, if this works in country A, B, C, D, whatever, or South America is a good example, where, you have a lot of developing countries there, and or Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, for example, like the things that have worked there, why would they not work in Pakistan, right? There's no reason for it not to. The only thing you need is that the regulator must be supportive.
Right. Now, I'm just going to, Habib, sorry to interrupt you, but you've said something very pertinent, and I'd like for you to also comment on the fact that the regulators, like, let's say, the State Bank with RAST, or the SECP with their regulatory sandbox for fintech startups, there has been a lot of focus on financial inclusion, and we see huge tailwinds for the fintech innovation in the country. But do you think that this is enough? If not, what are some of your recommendations?
I think they're doing a good job. It's tricky because it's a new space. By and large, the regulator was a bit lethargic before this. That is why we're left so far behind. It's no attack on anyone, but that's the reality. That look at where India is, look at where the other places are, and look at where we are. Why are we having to put in basic functionalities which other countries put in 7, 8 years ago? Right? shows that we were not as pushed. And it was like kind of that concept, "Ye chal raha hai, chalne dein, jaisa bhi hai, theek hai ji." Now, a big example of that, for example, is the company I'm involved with, Blinq. We're a billing aggregator. Now, when I got into this space, I was first invested into SadaPay, and then I realized that, no matter who wins the wallet race, and there can be multiples thereof, it would come down to being able to have use cases. And what are the use cases? What are the problems that the basic person faces today in Pakistan? Number one being bills. Number two, even if you look at e-commerce, because this is about e-commerce, 95% of transactions currently are cash on delivery. Now, there's two reasons for that, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. But so there's a problem set there, right? Because what's the point of me ordering something digitally and then having to drive to the bank or something to draw out cash? And that happens a lot more even in quick commerce, where if I'm ordering something from Food Panda, let's say at 2 a.m, and if I don't have the cash, what am I supposed to do? And mind you, there's only 1.5 million credit cards in Pakistan. So what about the other 99% of the population? So the regulator has been slow, even like take credit cards or debit cards. Why are there such strict rules on issuances? If you can't do it, give prepaid cards, right? I mean, I believe UBL at one point launched a prepaid debit credit card, and then that was too early and it died out. And at the moment, there's no such product even. So if someone has money and they don't want to hold cash, what should they do? I've run out of money several times. I mean, I use my cards online, but there's a element of risk.
To me all the time as well.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And Habib, we're going to talk a little more about this, but I also want to take Mr. Umair Muneer's opinion on the fact that, yes, Habib did bring up a very valid point about e-commerce and Pakistan being a cash-rich economy. I know that there is one of the reasons for this is, like you said, with your wife or your father, even my parents have a trust deficit when it comes to ordering things online, right? So even like, let's say if they want to order something from Daraz or AliExpress or something, they want to be able to see the product first and then onwards pay cash on delivery. That is one of the biggest challenges. What are some of your recommendations, and how do you think fintech can bring innovation in this space?
Yeah, so my views on, let's talk about cash on delivery first, right? So Pakistan is, as Habib said, Pakistan is a cash-rich nation, right? And there are a couple of main reasons. One of the reasons you are cash-rich is a lot of people are dealing just in cash, right? Even if they have bank accounts. So I'm talking about your SMEs. Your SMEs, for the fear of documentation and, for the tax man, if I start putting money in the account and if I start doing IBFTs or if I start writing cross checks, nowhere in the world, in the Western world, your checkbook. So my UK checkbook does not have a cash option. All checks come crossed. Not many people, the first time I moved to the UK, I said, how do I withdraw cash, right? And the only way you can withdraw cash is by going to the bank and filling in a form that I need cash and going through a KYC process of why do you need cash, right? So, but our checks are the other way around, right? So you have to cross them if you want to make a cross check, right? So it's a finer point is that, our economy needs to be incentivized to use digital payment. I'll give you an example, right? So in Punjab, when PRA was established, which is Punjab Revenue Authority, and they started taking sales tax, provincial sales tax. This is our post 18th Amendment, right? So initially, nobody was registering. All the restaurants, I'll talk about restaurants. The restaurants were not registering to come on board the PRA 16% sales tax. So PRA did something really smart initially. So they said, okay, everybody needs to register. And what they told the consumer, people like me, Habib, and you, is that, every month I'm going to give you a Honda City and I'm going to give you a TV. If you take the receipt, you make sure it's got a QR code on it. And that basically meant that now people started asking the receipt, कि कच्चा बिल नहीं चाहिए, मुझे पक्का बिल चाहिए. Okay. So this is one way of, putting pressure from the actual end customer to start getting regulated. They did something again last year, right? So they said on food, if you pay cash, it's 16% GST. Or so not GST, it's provincial tax, right? But if you pay cash, it's 5% or 6%, right?
That was my idea, by the way. Just so you know.
That was Habib's idea, by the way.
Amazing. It's amazing. So this is how you're changing behaviors, right? So I'm again going to come to you. Basically, by taking that step, one step has changed consumer behavior, right?
Just to add on that, on that point, do you know that the revenue because of that has tripled on, even though they're charging a lower percentage, it's tripled their revenue. And that's the point.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. So that's why they need to incentivize. So all of these, so the use of cash needs to be de-incentivized, and the use of digital payment method needs to be incentivized. So there was some suggestions floating around, I don't know where, that if you pay digital, we'll charge you, if you do IBFT, we'll not charge you withholding tax, for example. One of the biggest problems with payments in the B2B space is that withholding tax, right? Nowhere in the world you have withholding tax. But coming more to e-commerce, right? So e-commerce pay, the COD, and you pointed out that somebody pointed out there's a trust deficit, right? So let's address the trust deficit part, right? It's a big problem for e-commerce, right? And it's something I now see that finally Ministry of Commerce and the public sector has taken the lead in terms of getting some frameworks in place. We're not there, we're far away, right? So it boils down to consumer protection. कि अगर आपके साथ किसी seller ने fraud कर दिया, what can you do? I've been defrauded. I've been in e-commerce for 7 years. I've been defrauded multiple times. Somebody, and I'll give you this example. There was a gang operating in DHA Karachi, and what they were doing, they somehow got access to data from a courier company, God knows where. They were handwritten packages. They were coming to houses and saying, Umair sahab ka package hai, 7,000 rupees de. And my guy gave 7,000 from his petty cash.
Petty cash.
I opened the packet, lande ke kapde. I was in Lahore. He called my wife up. He said, "Bhai ne koi package mangwaya, aap de do paise," right? My wife sends me a picture of 2 lande ke pajame and 1 lande ke t-shirt.
Right? Unfortunate, very unfortunate, but it's a reality.
So how do we solve that problem? So for e-commerce, you have to solve 3 problems for payment space, for fintech space, at least. One problem you have to solve on the consumer side. How do you get the consumer to spend more on digital without discounts? So I'm going to, one thing that, you give a discount, people will use a card. So litmus test would be that if there's no discount, will somebody use their card? And what has helped really is 3DS, right? Before 3DS, credit card fraud was rampant. So with 3DS, so now what the regulator needs to do, or what the Ministry of Commerce or whoever is regulating this e-commerce space needs to do, they need to make things like 3DS, 2FA compulsory for e-commerce sites. They need to tell the banks that we are not going to accept non-3DS transactions from this date, right? And then they need to run a campaign saying it's actually safe to use your cards online. And the other problem that we have is that if a fraud happens or if you have a conflict with the seller, the bank does not support you. Right?
Absolutely. Reconciliation becomes.
I had identity theft in the UK, and somebody took my card, 9,000 pounds on my card, different purchases. My bank listened to me. Next day, I was refunded. Everything. I just had to sign saying I didn't do it. Right. Over here, you start feeling. So I had similar before 3DS. I had a 1,500 rupees ka charge on Food Panda on a Standard Chartered debit card. Right. And Standard Chartered did not believe me. A customer that's been banking with them for 20+ years. कि 1500 रुपए आपने खर्च किए होंगे, फूड पैंडा पे आपने खाना खाया है. मैंने कहा okay, keep that 1500 rupees. But for somebody who earns 30,000 rupees, if that fraud happens for 1500 rupees, suddenly that person will not use that card again, right? So it's a complex problem. The other problem that you need to solve is the seller side of the e-commerce play, right? Because the seller is
exactly
also
the reconciliation part for them as well.
the reconciliation part, and I see some really promising startups coming in that space, Postex being one. Some of the new generation courier companies are doing some excellent work in that. Discount financing, invoice discounting is coming into Pakistan. So all of that is happening. Again, these are distinct problems that need maybe a start of their own to solve. And I'm glad that people are jumping into this space and trying to solve this problem. On the trust deficit side, again, there's a lot of customer education, element to it. Like, for example, anybody on this call knows how rating works, right? But somebody who's just gotten his first smartphone and he or she is doing their first e-commerce transaction, give them a UI UX of any, mainstream website. They won't be able to navigate that. And though that is the mass market, right? Hum tunnel vision ho jate hain. In front of our laptops, in front of our fancy phones, in front of our, that's not the mass market. The mass market is what, Habib said, is the youngster who's probably knows how to use a smartphone, but is also very naive digitally of how things work and how this whole transaction is hanging. Where does the seller come in? Where does the platform come in? Where does the courier company come in? You've seen examples of couriers being sat because they brought something, which was not what was ordered, right? लोगों ने बिठा लिया उनको वहां पे कि जी आप लेके आए हैं TCS वाले, आप बैठ जाएं इधर, ये चीज सही नहीं है.
Yeah.
It is a complex problem with multiple moving parts too.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Omair, for the very in-depth analysis and those recommendations. We appreciate them. Mr. Furqan, you've been silent for some time, and we would love to hear you. Because mind you, what you're offering with YPay is more of an investment opportunity as well, and that is something that Gen Z shoppers are very unpredictable when it comes to.
Yeah, I think I would just like to introduce YPay and connect the pointers that have been made by Umair Saab and Habib Saab and the conversation. So you see, Pakistan unfortunately has one of the lowest investment to GDP ratio. And when we talk about investment, we always say that there are only 250K retail investors into the capital markets. But on the parallel side, where you have to see the opportunity, you could see that Pakistan is also the third most adopted country in terms of crypto investment. And there have been multiple resources that claim that Pakistani youth especially have invested more than 50 billion PKR rupees in crypto through Binance and other exchanges that are available in Pakistan. So you see, it's not about the people that they don't want to go to digital. It's about the accessibility that they want to see. So in today's world, Habib Saab would agree with me. I've been in US. So it's more of a customer experience that you give to your customers that matches to majority of the population in Pakistan right now. So I am being into my mid-20s. I completely understand that whatever apart from discounts that Umair Saab has mentioned, it's the customer experience that you give on your digital platform that attracts to your audience, whether it's an e-commerce website, whether it's fintech, or whether it's logistics or any sort of avenue that you're giving to your audience. And especially I'm talking about the youth of Pakistan. So YPay again is basically doing nothing but just selling mutual funds on a digital platform. So in Pakistan, this is the first time that a platform that is coming along that is bringing the masses towards the investment side, and especially towards the least riskiest instruments like mutual funds. And you could buy and sell mutual funds from your ease at home without ever going into do your biometric into the brokerage firm at any time of your ease. And that's what is being expected from startups like us, SadaPay, and many other that are out there. So I think the audience is more towards looking towards the trust factor. The discounts is another important factor in Pakistan industry. But apart from discount and the trust, it's the experience that you give to your customers. So I think that is going to build a huge momentum in terms of digitization. Whenever it comes to buying online using your digital cards, whether we are talking about the unbanked population and they want to go to be banked, there is a huge debate going on why the youth is so crazy about SadaPay. Is the experience that the SadaPay is giving to the masses population. I personally like the experience that SadaPay is giving to me, not in terms of wallet, although it's a facility that is being provided by many other players in the market, but it's the experience that I'm being offered by the platform. So I think the digital experience will play a huge part in the coming years in Pakistan, especially.
Right. Moving on, Habib. Now, whenever we talk about innovation in the fintech sector, but its relationship with e-commerce in particular, we talk about disruption. But one of the key factors that we're overlooking here is the fact that not everyone, like you correctly earlier pointed out, speaks English. Not everyone is tech savvy. For example, we've been to the remotest villages in Balochistan. People would not even know how to operate a smartphone, let alone, reconcile payments in a digital wallet. What are some of the innovations and maybe smart indigenous solutions that we can bring towards e-commerce and in the fintech sector, so those people can still order things online and yet experience fintech in their own manner?
I mean, look, I think that's going to change quickly. First off, there's a big push towards creating the ability for internet to be accessible all across Pakistan, even in the most, barring obviously certain security issues which keep popping up. Unfortunately, it's the nature of where we are. Not the best neighbors all around. So, given that, it's a little difficult, but by and large, you will see that the internet adoptability and the internet penetration in Pakistan is just going to keep, growing by leaps and bounds. How do people reconcile? Well, that's where, honestly, I think companies like even where Blinq is, from a merchant perspective as well as a user perspective, it all comes down to creating the ability for a user to be able to make those payments and utilize the internet in a convenient manner. So the whole point of e-commerce or even of any kind of digital mean is that it should make your life easier. You should have to spend less time doing what you were doing regularly. Unfortunately, as yet, there are gaps, and take, for example, fraud. If I'm having to deal with fraud every time I make a transaction online, or I'm afraid that my card is going to be utilized for fraud, the chances of me adapting that technology is far less. And this is the same kind of iterations that the entire world went through when those other countries across the world started. eBay, for example, I'll say this specifically because we have, Mr. Umair Saab from OLX. What eBay did initially, eBay started to buy out insurance for all their transactions. And, on a transactional value, I'm sure you have margins higher than, at least I would say around 10%. Now, what they did is that in order to increase their transaction volume and create a user safety mechanism, they insured all their transactions through a outside insurance third party. Cost of insuring maybe 1%, 1.5% across the entire transaction volume. What that did is that the minute there was a transaction reported as fraud to eBay, eBay simply paid out the user through a third-party insurer, and then investigated it internally through an, fraud. They developed an in-house fraud verification system, and aligned with the insurance company, so the user did not have to deal with all that headache, thereby increasing their use of digital as well as just using e-commerce a lot more. What we are doing with Blinq, we are offering reconciliation in real time of all bills, all payments, and we are working on a solution soon to be launched, which is going to handle primarily the cash on delivery by digitizing that. So we're working on a solution. I want to patent it because as of yet, there's no such solution. Before I launch it, I want to patent it because if I go to even say OLX here and I say I have a solution, unfortunately, what happens in Pakistan, innovation is mostly imitated, not appreciated. So if I go, they'll say, yaar, ye to hum khud bhi kar sakte hain. And instead of giving us the value of our R&D and letting us make our 2 cents, it will be कि जी चलो ये हम copy कर लेते हैं, खुद बना लेते हैं. So that's been the problem. So innovation requires also that ideas are valued, they're protected, because a lot of people will just sit on their ideas otherwise and say, you know what, not the right time. Oh, I can't, because you can't protect it. So that's where I feel the regulator, to an earlier question, what can the regulator do? And maybe not the state bank, but this is a space where I think a lot of work needs to be done. Same goes for counterfeit. A major issue has been in online is counterfeit. So in the absence of me, I mean, I bought a pair of Adidas shoes the other day from a merchant on Daraz. And when they came, I was like, these are definitely not Adidas. They had all the labeling, the box, everything. Yeah. I thought I'm getting a really great deal. But the minute they turned up, I was like, how do I verify? Right? So there needs to be on the website side as well, and on the regulator side.
Intellectual property organization needs to pick up their game, definitely. Yeah. You've made some very valid points, Habib. In the interest of time, we've only got a few more minutes left. So we want to hear from all of you. But just to inform you, Mr. Umair, we would like you to elaborate on one thing in particular and then also share your concluding remarks. But what I want to hear from you is from the e-commerce side purely. The idea is to create ease of access for customer and overall great experience. And we keep hearing about it. But we know that some giants have set the benchmark pretty high in terms of customer service and customer experience. However, it's an area that is still neglected in Pakistan. So in your personal capacity, what exactly are we looking at? What are the future plans like? What more innovation can be expected?
So, when I look at innovation, right, innovation needs to be localized and it doesn't need to be sexy. So we get carried away by buzzwords. Innovation can be as simple as giving an e-commerce platform like me rails to say pay bills. And when I look at the fintech landscape right now, everybody you look at fintech 6 months ago, everybody was trying to do a wallet. Incumbents, startups, right. You walk into a conference and you'll see 10 founders with 10 wallet offerings. Build me rails, build me fraud prevention rails, build me.
Absolutely, and it becomes that much more harder.
But the problem is those rails are not sexy, right? I'm sorry, I'm using this word.
But why do you think Blinq is there? And honestly,
I'm glad people are talking about it. I'm glad, even State Bank is using the word rails for the first time. We need rails for fintech. We need rails for logistics. We need rails for intellectual property. Build those rails. Then see the innovation flourish. Yeah. Because then my product team or Furqan's product team, ask Furqan, he's dealing with mutual funds products from like 10, 12 big mutual fund providers. Unki APIs nahi kaam karti. Some of the biggest 3PLs that we work with and we give millions of rupees of business to them every month cannot sustain more than 20 requests a second on the API. So innovation ko to side pe rakhte hain. I'm sorry, I'm being, matlab, aap pehle basics to, 101 sahi kare. फिर जाए 201 पे, फिर पढ़े innovation को, right? So I have a very so solve problems that are worth solving in terms of and that is my message to people aspiring to build fintechs in Pakistan. There's so many problems to be solved. B2B के specific problems हैं, B2C के specific problems हैं, C2C के specific problems हैं. One thing that Habib mentioned, fraud, that's something that we are working on. So inshallah, you'll see OLX come out with something in the next 6 months, which will, ये जो trust deficit आपको OLX के platform में नजर आता है, to remove that. I cannot say anything more, but we are in that journey right now. But इस सारी करने के लिए ना, I need support from, stop selling me payment gateways. I get one email a day from a payment gateway provider. हमारा बेहतर है जी, हमसे लेने.
Exactly.
Right. So, give me things that I can build my business on, right? Or anybody, a home merchant, right? उसके क्या पेन पॉइंट्स हैं, वो उसको किस तरह अपना कैश मैनेज करना है, उसको किस तरह अपना सप्लाई चेन मैनेज करनी है, राइट? All of those rails are missing. It's a huge opportunity for people who just want to do focused work, building the non-sexy stuff, right?
Right. You've definitely spoken candidly, and thank you so much for sharing those insights. Furqan, your concluding remarks.
Yeah, I think I would just build up on Umair Saab, what he has said. I think the solutions must be by the people and for the people. I remember my professor at my one of my university, he used to mention कि यार एक कराची की पानी की प्रॉब्लम है एक पर्टिकुलर एरिया की, उसका सोल्यूशन कौन बना रहा होता है बैठ के? 12 men sitting in an air conditioned room, well suited, not even a woman, और वो बात कर रहे होते हैं सोल्यूशन की जो कि उस स्टेक होल्डर्स के लिए होता ही नहीं है. तो it's more of a kind of a localized kind of thing. So Habib Saab also mentioned कि भाई we need local entrepreneurs, local innovation and local personalized solutions. That is the way to go. I think Umair Saab has already stressed a lot on that, and we cannot come up with solutions without being involving the stakeholders. अगर stakeholder की problem ही सबसे बड़ी trust है, we cannot come up with digitizing payment solution without being solving the trust problem. So I think both of these gentlemen have already covered most of it, and I think having said that, personalized solutions and involving stakeholders in creating solutions, that is the way to go to move forward, I think.
Thank you, Furqan. Now, Habib, before you give your concluding remarks, what I would also like for you to shed light on is the fact that we've seen some massive investments, like I pointed out earlier, and that can be a bit discouraging for newer entrants into this space of fintech and e-commerce, and perhaps the amalgamation of the two. What is your advice to those younger, newer entrants? Do you think it's still worth getting into the market? Will it become saturated? What does the future look like?
I can tell you from my own experience, I had a really tough time raising for Blinq because it's not, as Umair Saab said, sexy. Okay. And I know that there's a huge problem set. There are investors who came back and said, no, well, Rast is coming up. We don't know how this space is going to evolve because there's not enough clarity. But you know what? I'm processing, as of this month, more than 30,000 transactions a month. I don't have my own rails at the moment. I have a pipeline which is taking me to 65,000 transactions by the end of April based on my existing signups. My target is 100,000 transactions a month by June. And, eventually that gets me to a point where I look at building my own rail. At the moment, obviously, it's not cost effective. Eventually, yes, when I'm doing millions of there's 4 billion transactions that need to be digitized. So, there could be 10 companies like mine, and each one is still going to have so much left over. And that's just based on the existing. So I think from startups or for innovators or for new entrants, the basic thing is, look, understand first the market, identify genuine problems as a user, as a consumer, because at the end of the day, all of this, it's centered around consumers. If you solve a problem for a consumer, whether it's in terms of their purchasing or and there can be different type of consumer. It could be an individual, it could be a retailer, it could be a business. The problem is huge. And within each one of those niches, they're going to have different solutions. For example, credit book, a great example where they're just digitizing the khata. It's something so simple. Like one would say, ki, yaar, really like, what we are trying to do again for Blinq, my goal is to be the first direct debit in Pakistan, right? Now, again, I think you guys have both been, my panelists have been in the US and the UK. So, why don't we have direct debit? Why do I have to log into my banking app every month to pay my credit card? It's absurd.
Yeah.
It takes my time. It's then first off, one time I don't mind doing it. I set it up. Why do I have to do it every month? And then if I don't do it, or I forget, or the internet is down, or the banking app is down, I have to pay a late fee. Completely ridiculous. So, and now this is not really even innovation. It's just doing what the rest of the world is doing.
Realization.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity, and kids should not get disheartened, but just be sure that the problem you're trying to solve is a real problem.
Right. Thank you very much for those insights. It's been a valuable knowledge-packed discussion with all of you. I thank you, and CXO Global is grateful for your time. Please keep contributing to the knowledge economy.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Ladies
much.
and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. We've got some very interesting discussions coming up as well. This is day 3 of the FinCom 2022 by CXO Global Forum.